Good evening, boys and girls. I hope you're all doing good. I want to talk to you a little bit about food. How many of you like food? Raise your hand if you like to eat. I think we all like to eat sometimes, right? Well, who feeds you? Probably your parents, maybe grandparents. But someone's got to feed you, right? Well, have you ever thought about where your food comes from? You know, everything we eat has to be grown, harvested, caught, killed, processed, transported in trucks. And then it's at a store where we go and buy it, and then we bring it home. We have to cook it and all that, right? Well, I'm going to tell you about a time when Jesus fed over 5,000 people without growing, catching, harvesting, killing, processing, trucking, or even cooking food. So let's get to the story. It comes out of John chapter 6. Sometime later, you can ask your parents to read you the story. But the basic story is this. Jesus and his followers had crossed over the Sea of Galilee, and they saw a big group of people coming towards them. And Jesus asked his disciples, he said, what are we going to do to feed all these people? I mean, there's a bunch of people here, and they don't have enough food to eat. We got to figure out something to feed them. And one of his disciples said, Lord, it would take a half a year's wages, a half a year's work to earn enough money to just buy enough food for each person to have one bite, much less actually feed all these people. And another one of his disciples said, hey, Jesus, look, here's a little boy that has a basket with 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. And Jesus said, make all the people sit down, and we're about to feed them. So then he took and he started having the disciples distribute the food to all the people. 5 little loaves of bread and 2 little fish. And they fed all those people, 5,000 people. And when they were done, they gathered up enough bread leftovers to fill 12 more baskets. Well, this is obviously a miracle, right? He started out with 5 loaves in one basket and 2 small fish, and he ended up with 12 baskets of leftovers. Let me show you how much bread and fish Jesus probably started with. So here's 5 little loaves of Passover bread that I made tonight. This bread's probably similar to what they ate back then. It's kind of hard. It's not like the bread you get out of a package at the store. But this is what they ate a lot back then, especially during Passover when this was very near that time. So he had 5 of these loaves of bread. And he had 2 little fish. Maybe something like this. These are sardines. That's one of them. He had 2 of these. And they might have been a little bigger than this, but you get the idea. They're pretty small, right? He fed 5,000 people with that. How's that possible? Well, it's because Jesus could do miracles, right? Nothing's impossible for Jesus. In fact, Jesus was with God when the world was created. Genesis tells us that. John, in his gospel, also tells us that. Jesus was there with God when the earth was created. And John even tells us that without Jesus, nothing that was created was created. So all the fish in the sea, all the plants in the ground that we make bread out of, all of those things Jesus made. So to him, to be able to feed that many people with this little amount of food was no big deal. I want to give you an idea of how many people 5,000 people was. So this is how much food Jesus had, again. Think back when we're at church. Close your eyes real quick. Close them. You got your eyes closed? So imagine when we're all there in the church auditorium singing songs. Even when that church building's pretty full, we probably have about 700 people. So think about this. Jesus fed 8 full church buildings of people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 little bitty fish. Pretty amazing, huh? But he's the Lord of the earth. He created everything. He can do it. I want to close with this idea. Jesus, when he was teaching everybody on earth, said he was the bread of life. And he said that if people would come to him, the bread of life, they would no longer be hungry. Well, he's not talking about physical food there. He's talking about spiritual food. Jesus' word is his spiritual food. Where is Jesus' word? Well, it's in the Bible, right? We have Jesus' word in the Bible. Jesus' word gives us all we need to be perfect and complete in God. When your parents are taking communion, they first take the bread, right? And that bread is symbolic of Jesus' body. And when we take that bread, we remember his life and death. And it helps us remember that he's the bread of life. I hope each of you remembers this story as you watch your parents take communion. And in the future, when you get baptized and start taking the Lord's Supper, I hope you remember this story about Jesus feeding 5,000 people with so little. But more importantly, I hope you always remember that Jesus is the bread of life. Now, if you want to taste what a sardine tastes like, go ask your parents to get you a can. But I'm gonna sample a little bit for you here. I'm gonna take a piece of this bread, and I'm gonna take one of these sardines, and I'm gonna balance it on it, and I'm gonna eat the whole thing. Fishy. Night, kids.